Okay, so just grab a length of the 18 gauge red wire, and it's going to be about 2 3/4 of an inch long, which is about 70 millimeters. And that's going to make the last wiring connection that we have to do.
Let's see if we can get that on camera. So it's going to be going from this terminal right here into the blue junction for the DC input.
Yeah, and we're going to show you all of that connected. So we're going to need a standard ring terminal on one end and a tinned length of wire at the other end. So I think you know what you're doing. So go ahead and get that made up, and I'll show you the finished wire in just a minute. Okay, so there's your finished wire with a tinned end. And go ahead and bring it to your blue junction on your PCB so that you can size it for a good fit. I'm going to do it by eye because I do so many of these. So something like that's going to be just perfect. Okay, well, it's time to get all of this connected up. I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so turn over your chassis so that you're actually facing the top now. So the IEC is like this. You can see the on is up. That tells you that that's the top. And we're going to get this wire installed over here in the corner junction. Charles is going to check the orientation of that wire so we don't get it mucked up. We preloaded these little lock washers. And Charles, which way does this go?
So you're going to want it to go off this direction.
So just
other way.
Like this?
Like that.
Okay, so that's the way we're going to load it. Sometimes these screws require a #1 Phillips. They're just a little bit finer, and the fit will be just a little bit better. So let's preload a #1 Phillips, and there we go. Now, because all of this is final wiring, we're gonna load it into a driver. We're gonna support the tab that it screws into and the wire, and
using a little bit of pressure, we're going to tighten it right down.
Yeah, now you don't want to over tighten this or you'll strip it out or bend something. So just make sure you've got some good support in there and snug it down, and then give it the old wiggle test. And that's looking pretty good.
Okay, now we're going to do the exact same thing for this one right here. Since we have easy access, go ahead and take care of that, and we'll see you back in just a second.
Okay, so we've got the mains hot leg. You see how it swings off of that, and up it comes. And we're going to tighten that down too while we're on camera. And again, we're going to support everything. And we're just going to take our time. It takes us a little bit of pressure on the turning to get the lock to tighten up because it's got a little bit of play. And now that's really good. Now, whenever you're dealing with the high voltage side of things, it's really important that you don't have a loose connection. So you always do a little wiggle test to make sure that you're really on good. If not, just tighten it up a bit. And we're going to flip it over, and we're also going to check to make sure that we're on the correct leg of the IEC. And we are. If you look over here, you'll see that that passes through the fuse, right? That's why we want to make sure the hot leg is fused. Okay, well, I think Charles,
well, we got one more leg to actually put on here.
Oh yeah, and this is the trickiest of them all.
Yeah, so let's do this before we actually get the PCB in, and that's going to go in on this corner right in here. It might be a little hard to see, but it's the exact same way. It's just coming off on an angle this direction.
I find when you're installing these screw assemblies like this, that loading it with the screwdriver really helps a lot.
Yeah, things are a little bit tight in the back here with this size of switch. We actually tried to find a smaller switch for this job, and unfortunately, because we're switching so much current, this is about the only thing that's reasonable that'll work for us.
Now we want to make sure that everything is arranged so we're compact. So you can see I'm actually coming off of the switch terminal sideways. These terminals are designed to go 3 different ways, which is really great. And I'm just going to tighten that one up as well while I'm supporting it. And don't be afraid to wiggle things around until you get a nice looking fit. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, actually one more little job. We've got 3 ground wires to install. So go ahead and cut 3 pieces about 3 1/4 inches, which is going to be about 85 millimeters. Let's just check and make sure. Yeah, 85 millimeters is going to be good. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a tinned end on one end of each of these wires and a double length of strip, because all 3 of them are going to this ground lug right here, which connects up to the IEC safety ground. Okay, I'll see you back in a minute and we'll get it installed. Okay, so I've got my 3 ends tinned, and I've roughly sized them and snipped them back. And I've got 3 bare ends now that are twisted and ready to install. So our ground lug is right here on the end. In fact, if we looked at the IEC, we would see it's on this one right here. That's your safety ground. And of course that gives us 0 volts. So we're going to put all 3 of the non-tinned ends onto
the solder tab here.
And we're going to do one on the bottom like this, if you can see that. From our perspective, notice how we've got let's get you a little bit more centered, and we're going to bring 2 in like this. So if you find it easier, just use a pair of pliers, but I'm just using my fingers so that you can't see what I'm doing. Just kidding. So yeah, a pair of pliers is fine too, and you're basically just splitting the wire in 2 and
pressing it back on itself.
Yeah. It's a little fiddly. In fact, this whole rear area, it's hard to film because there's not a lot of space to work in, and you might find it easier to put a little hook in your wire before you put it on. Yeah, the hardest part about filming a build is when you get into a fussy area. You know, builders are going to take their time and sort it all out, but we actually have to show it as well.
As best as we can anyway.
Okay, so that's what it should look like. We don't need a piece of shrink. This is the 0 volt line.
And we're actually going to want to be able to come back on that lug later on if we need to do a discharge or clip on for checking voltages with our multimeter.
Yeah, so it's good to leave it bare. And I'm just making sure the wires are all turned back nice and neatly. We definitely want a little bit of flux. And while we are fluxing it, let's get the soldering iron turned up. So I think we could go all the way up to 375. There's a lot of wires connected up to that lug. So 375C is 700 Fahrenheit.
Maybe just a little bit more flux on there because you have a lot of wire, a lot of surface area. Not a huge amount.
This is where having a bigger tip is going to make life easier as well. So if you're running a small tip and you have a selection of tips, go ahead and change up to a 1/8 chisel tip.
After you let it cool down. No grabbing hot solder tips.
Yeah, you only do that once. Maybe twice. I remember years and years ago, oh, jeepers, almost 50 years ago now, I was building my very first preamplifier, and in those days I was just a young lad, and I was working well into the night, into the wee hours, as they say. And I leaned over to grab my soldering iron off the bench, and yeah, I grabbed the tip, and boy, did that hurt. Caught it right between two fingers. So just fill in on both sides of the solder tab, and as soon as it looks like you're nice and full, just pull off your iron.
And just be careful too, because we are operating close to this fan. So try to make sure you don't bring the iron in on an angle and touch it. I mean, it's not going to damage too much here unless you really melt through it, but it's not going to look very nice.
Okay, now let's have a look at what we've done. So
we have one wire that hasn't quite been soldered on.
So I'm going to show you what to do. So it looks like these are really good. So let's flip it over, and that's, of course, this wire here at the bottom. So I'm just going to shift it back into the pile.
It actually is supposed to go this way. There we go.
It's not absolutely critical where everything goes because the wire is very flexible. We're using a fine multi-strand wire so that you can get stuff to where it needs to go. So I've added a little bit of flux, and I'm going to add a little bit of solder to my iron, and I'm going to get in behind that wire and just fill in this side, and I can even tug on that a little bit to move it over a bit. And now I'm looking at it, you can't really see it, but I can see that I haven't quite filled it in here, so I'm coming in again while it's still nice and hot, and I'm just going to fill that in. That's looking a lot better. We're going to do a tug test. We're going to flip it over and check the other side and make sure that everything is well connected up, and I could even fill that in a bit more. I think we're good, but I want to make absolutely sure, so I'm going to come in over here and now things are looking just perfect. It's really important with all wire connections that you have a good solder job, but in particular with the ground return pass, we want as low resistance as possible. So you've got to make sure that all your wires are well soldered to that lug and that there's no iffy solder work. So don't be afraid to come in and rework it a couple of times until you get a nice, good, solid fill. Let me see if I can get that on camera so you can see. And we'll just try to focus in a little bit here. That's about as good as I can get it. Yeah. So you can see how we're wrapped around the lug coming back. And it's not 100% pretty, but it's a good solder job, and that's what you want. Okay, well done everyone. This segment was really kind of tricky, but if you took your time, you'll have gotten it all done nice and neatly.